Again, today I want to talk just briefly about the five Megillot, the five scrolls there that are in the Tanakh in the Hebrew Bible. They are the Song of Songs, Ruth, Lamentation, Ecclesiastes, and Esther. There were three biblical books in the Bible that were attributed to King Solomon, who you know was very wise. The Song of Songs was attributed to him when he was a young man, okay, because it's filled with love and eros. Proverbs was attributed to him when he was a father trying to tell his son how he should look for a wife. And Ecclesiastes or Kohelet was attributed to him, to King Solomon, at an older time in his life. Now, that brings us to why we're studying this today and why I want to share this with you. In Ashkenazic communities, the Song of Songs is typically read in its entirety on this Shabbat, on Chol HaMoed, before the reading of the Torah. Now, we're not going to read the whole Song of Songs today, but we are going to read quite a bit of it because as I was preparing for this week, I was just struck by the fact that the Song of Songs not only has so much to teach us all the time about loving God, but in this particular time it has something very, very spiritual that I wanted to share with you that I think it teaches us. So we're going to start today by looking at Song of Songs, or what in Hebrew is called Shir HaShirim. By the way, in the Christians refer to it as the Song of Solomon. You can understand because it's one of the attributed books to him. So, in some translations, both Jewish and Christian, they've taken the chapters in the Song of Songs and they've made them into dialogues between men and women with a chorus in the background, and it's all cute. And if we were all together, maybe next time that we do this next year, we can all do this, and it's a lot of fun to read them as a kind of a dramatic reading. But in this one, the woman in Song of Songs, in this great biblical love story, says, I'm a rose of Sharon, okay, the rose of Sharon, the lily of the valley. And the man responds, he said, like a lily of the valley among the thorns is my darling among young women. And then she says, oh, like an apple among the trees of the forest is my beloved among the young men. I delight to sit in his shade, and his fruit is sweet to my taste. Let him lead me to the banquet hall, and let his banner be over me be love. Strengthen me with raisins, refresh me with apples, for I am faint with love. His arm is under my head, and his right arm embraces me. O daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you by the gazelles and by the does of the field, do not arouse or wake in love until it so desires. She continues. This is a wonderful chapter. Listen, my beloved, look, here he comes like leaping across the mountains, bounding over the hills. My beloved is a gazelle or a young stag. Looks, there he stands behind the walls, gazing through the windows, peering through the lattice. My beloved spoke to me, and he said to me, now this is important verses right here, because this is one of the reasons why we read it in the springtime. Listen to this. Arise, my darling, my beautiful one, come with me. See, the winter is past. The rains are over and gone. Remember, this is the beginning of the dry season in the land of Israel. Flowers are appearing on the earth. The season of singing has come. The cooing of the doves is heard in our land. This is one of the reasons why it is, the winter is past, the rains are over and gone, is why it's read on Passover. The fig tree forms its early fruit. The blossoming vines spread their fragrance. Arise, come, my darling, my beautiful one, come with me. And then he answers, my dove, in the clefts of the rock, in the hiding places on the mountainside, show me your face. Let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet and your face is lovely. Catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, our vineyards that are in bloom. And then she says, my beloved is mine, and I am his. He browses among the lilies. This is Dodi Liva Anilo Haroeb Shoshanim. Those of you who know, this is the most popular, a very popular Israeli and American Jewish song, and most frequently we found it find it in weddings. Okay, the Israeli version is do di li va ani lo, or the American version by Cantor Steve Scher is do di li va ani lo. You know, it's a wonderful wedding song and processional, and you get the idea. I also want to mention that there's something very similar to that do di li in chapter 6, verse 3 of the Song of Songs. Ani the do di v'do di li. I am my beloved, and my beloved is mine. And that becomes very popular because it is often to be found on wedding bands. Okay, here's two examples of wedding bands. And sometimes people put them on the inside of a regular wedding band like this. I don't have it on the inside of mine, but they have it inscribed. Again, what does this mean? I am my beloved, and my beloved is mine. Okay, it's a good thing if you're going to get married, or if you want to give a loved one, a spouse or a partner, a nice wedding band. Or something like this, do di li, ani the do di v'do di li, I'm my beloved and my beloved is mine, is a great thing to give. The song goes on, you know, with how delightful is in verse 10, the fragrance, you've stolen my heart. And then we get to the problem. And here's the problem. About 1900 years ago, there was a whole debate between the rabbis. Some thought that the Song of Songs was just a little too bit erotic. And this was a time when the canonization, that is, deciding which of the writings, the Psalms, the Proverbs, Lamentations, Ecclesiastes, which of the Proverbs would go in to the corpus of the Tanakh. Okay, Tanakh means the Torah, the writings, the prophetic writings, and which of the writings, Psalms, Proverbs. And there was a debate, apparently, and this was in the 2nd century, between rabbis who thought it was just really too erotic, and others, in this case represented by Rabbi Akiva, who said, no, you have to have it in there. And why did Akiva say that? Let's see what he said first. Rabbi Akiva said, God forbid, no one in Israel disputed about the Song of Songs, saying that it does not defile the hand. In other words, this comes in a section about Yadayim, what defiles your hand. But then he says the following, for all of eternity in its entirety is not worthy as the day on which the Song of Songs was given to Israel. This book is so important, so important. And then he says, for all of the writings, Proverbs, Psalms, Ecclesiastes, everything that we're talking about are holy. But he says, and this is, remember, less than a century after the destruction of the temple in 70, less than 50 years, he says, for all of the writings are holy, but the Song of Songs is the Holy of Holies. And because of the importance of Rabbi Akiva and of this teaching, the Song of Songs, which appears to be so filled with erotic language and whatever, is to be found in the corpus of the Hebrew Bible. And obviously the reason is that because this is viewed not only as something between a male and a female, or something between the King Solomon and his maids, but as a love song between God and the people, and specifically in this case between God and the Jewish people. So it occurred to me that there's one passage that really speaks to me at this particular time and in the midst of this horrible pandemic. And it's in chapter 5. It's one of my favorite passages of the Song of Songs. It's one of my favorite passages in the entire corpus of the Tanakh. And by the way, it's this passage, I think, that really gave me the understanding of why Akiva thought it was so important. So here is the scene that it sets. It's a lovely scene. I hope you like it as much as I do. In chapter 5, we read that the male is saying, I've come into my garden, my sister, my bride. I have gathered my myrrh, my perfume, with my spice. I've eaten my honeycomb and my honey. I have drunk my wine and my, what does it say? And my milk. And then it goes to the woman, okay? And listen to this. This is so amazing. She said, I slept. I was asleep, but my heart was awake. And all of a sudden, okay, all of a sudden, my beloved, knock, 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 is knocking on the door. And what does the male say to her? She says, open to me, my sister, my darling, my dove, my flawless one, because my head is drenched with dew, my hair with the dampness of the night. He's standing there at the door saying, open the door for me. It's a little bit misty out here. I'm a little bit damp. I want to come in. I want to come in and hold you and kiss you, my beloved. But what does she say to herself? She says, oh, I had taken off my robe. Was I to get dressed again? I had washed my feet. I'm in bed. Was I to soil them again because the floors were dirt floors? And then she says, my beloved thrust his hand through the latch opening. You could hear he's trying to get in, but it's locked. It's locked. And then she says, and when I heard that going, when I heard that lock, you know, that latch turning up and down and up and down, my heart began to pound for him. And then she says, at that moment, okay, even though she had put on her pajamas, if you want, and cleaned up for bed, I guess today you'd say brushed her teeth and done all of that, she says, I arose to open for my beloved, and my hands drip with myrrh, perfume, my fingers with flowing. You know, she gets up, but before she goes to open the door, she starts putting perfume all over her. And then she says, my fingers had so much perfume on me that it was actually affecting the bolt of the door and the handle of the door. And then she says, verse 6, I opened for my beloved, but my beloved had left. He was gone. And my heart sank at his departure. I looked for him and I didn't find him. I called him, but he did not answer. The watchmen found me, and as they made rounds in the city, they beat me, they bruised me. They took away my cloak, those watchmen on the walls. Daughters of Jerusalem, she says, I charge you, if you find my beloved, will you tell him that I am faint with love? So now this brings us to where we are today, okay? I love this graphic. The earth has been closed for repairs. The woman didn't get up immediately. She had all these excuses not to let God in, not to let her lover in. And then when she decided she was going to let the lover in, she had to get for pits. She had to put myrrh, maybe, I don't know, makeup on or whatever. And then by the time she went to the door, okay, the lover was gone. And she felt a sense of alienation. And it occurred to me that, boy, if there's ever a time in my life when we should feel this sense of galut, this alienation from God and from spirituality, it might be now, because as I say in this picture that I'm showing on my screen, the earth is really closed for repairs. Ishai Ribo, I mentioned him several times this week. A popular Israeli singer writes in a song called Ketem Melucha. What do you want? Ma ta rotzeh? What do you want, God? Shenilmad from Mizer, that we should learn from this. Okay? And here's what I think we need to learn in answer to Ishai Ribo. I think we have to say, we're in quarantine, we're in social isolation, but we have to go deep inside and say, God is breaking quarantine everywhere. Where is God to be found at this particular time. And this is important, again, because maybe God at this particular moment is knocking on the door, just like the lover, just like in the Song of Songs. And maybe we don't have the intentionality. The intentionality, or in Hebrew is called the kavanah, to get up and to open the door. You know, the greatest example, a kavanah is an intro to a prayer that you say before you do the prayer. So, for example, when we sing Adonai Sifatai Tifta, God, open up my lips and mouth and I declare your praise, and then we start with the tefillah, Baruch Atah Adonai, okay. Baruch Atah Adonai. When we do that, the kavanah is, God, let me open my lips. But do we have the kavanah, okay, to really get up and to open the door? To open the door if God is really knocking. And so I read a book, I read an article this week that was really cute, okay? And the article said, look, everyone is talking about the coronavirus and no one wants it. Yes, no one wants it. But maybe we should be talking not about the coronavirus, but that we need to be infected right now with a virus called the kavanah virus. The virus of intentionality to find God's presence here no matter what. So where do I find God? I find God, I think we can find God at this particular time in God's angels who are doing so much incredible work. Abby is on this call, okay? And on this service. Abby to me is not just Abby, but God, one of God's angels. We can find God in the presence of the doctors and the nurses, and the people working in hospitals and nursing homes and whatever, who are trying to take people, who are trying to do their best to take care of people. We can find God in the volunteers. Like, for example, this past week, volunteers from Temple who delivered food to people, to shut-ins. They didn't pay, the people didn't have to pay for the food. They delivered shut-ins, food to the shut-ins so that people could have a meal for Passover Seder. We can find God in the acts of kindness that people seem to be doing for one another, in the way that despite all of this social isolation, there's a sense of cooperation in the land. There's a greater sense of generosity. People want to collaborate. People want to be more, to have more selflessness. We can find God in the very technology, I would maintain, that enables us to remain in touch. Imagine if this happened to us 30 years ago. How would Temple manage to function without something like Zoom or FaceTime or Mevo cameras or whatever it is? All of the apps and the websites and the emails and the telephones that continue to allow us to be in touch with one another, okay, and to learn Torah and to reach out to one another and say, I care, how are you doing? We can find God in nature, in the rising and the setting of the sun. It's so incongruous to me that my yard is so incredibly beautiful at this time. It's got the trees and the plants and the azaleas. It's wonderful. And then we come to the last. We come to the last verse of the Psalms. Okay. The last verse of the Psalms, because I think that we can find God there too. And I'm going to share it with you right now. The last verse of the Psalms says, okay, whoops, wrong one. Let me go back. The last verse of the Psalm, where is it? There we go. Okay. You've got my list. And the last verse of the Psalm says, Kol ha-neshama tihalel. Okay? Hallelujah. This is what we sing usually at the beginning of service. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Okay? Kol ha-neshama tihalel, which means every soul must praise God. But there's a wonderful midrash that says, do not read kol haneshama, but which means every soul, but kol haneshima, with every breath I take. Reminds me of the Police song, okay? With every breath I take, I should be aware of the presence of God in the world. What an amazing thing. What a totally amazing thing to say. So let me take this screen down for just a second and conclude with just a couple of really important remarks, okay? Now, if I go back to that cute article I read, it seems to me that this week what we need to do is to combat the coronavirus with the Kavanah virus. We need to pay attention, my friends, because I honestly believe from the depths of my soul that, like in the Song of Songs, God is knocking on the door. But we have too many excuses. We have too many excuses as to why we don't want to get up, why we don't want to drop, why things we're doing, where we're not able to see and to hear that God is knocking on the door. So the question is, can we hear that knock? Will we get up and respond? Can we be grateful during this crisis? Can we help others? Can we open the door even when the earth seems to be closed, even when we are quarantined, even when we are socially isolated? Can we open the door to let God into our lives? My dear friends, let us hope so. I honestly think that today should be our prayer, but it should also be our holy task. Shabbat Shalom.